Welcome to the Council of Time. The broadcast will begin in just a few minutes.
Good evening. Well, actually, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I sincerely hope you guys have pretty good volume right now. Hope that you do. It is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. I want to tell you guys something about Mother's Day. It's something that we have these holidays, right? Most holidays have an origin, but most often the origin is lost. And celebration begins to take a turn, right? A very strange turn sometimes. But Mother's Day is one of those times where I think it should be a bigger deal than what it is. I do. And the reason why, in society, in the last, since the 70s, I guess you could say, when the divorce rate went up, a lot of kids found themselves with a mother. The dads were in and out, right? But the mothers, for the most part, stayed, for the most part. And lots of sacrifices were given from those mothers to raise those children. And it seems like everybody today, of all the moments they ever had in life, their mother's an intimate part of those moments. Whether it be a mother or a grandmother, whatever the case is, there's always a mother involved, right? And it's a good thing the Lord made us distinctly different, men and women in that regard, because women feel their environment. But with that gift that they have of being very sensitive to those things around them, they're able to discern needs and wants of a child, right? When a child needs a real hug or not. And fathers do okay, but for the most part, mothers have been an intimate part in raising society, period, right? You guys might be interested to know there's a character, her name is Anna Jarvis, and Mother's Day is attributed to her, but her mother originated that idea, right? Here's what Mother's Day is based upon, right? She of course was Elder Jarvis. That's what they call her, Elder Jarvis. And her original idea for Mother's Day was not for, everybody to give their own mom a card. And that's not what it was for. It was for mothers. They would get together, right? And they would help out other mothers who were less fortunate than they were. Do you guys know that? Isn't that something? So Ann Jarvis's mother, she had this idea, and she had written some beautiful things about it. And she desired that that day be established. It was actually her daughter who had that day established. Ann Jarvis, she actually had that started. But her mother wanted to memorialize motherhood, right? Motherhood. And it was Ann Jarvis who fought that struggle for that holiday to be recognized. But again, it was based on mothers getting together, right, who would help out the less fortunate mothers than they were. And they would do this once a year. That was Mother's Day. So it was mothers would help out mothers. Isn't that something? That's beautiful. That really is beautiful. But of course, when people get a hold of holidays and over time things mutate, right? They mutate, they change, they become something else. And of course, the origin of what it truly was is normally lost. And in this case, that's precisely what took place. The original idea of Mother's Day was lost. In fact, if you look historically back into a lot of holidays, you'll find that what people celebrate in these holidays right now has little to nothing to do with what actually began at their origins. So to reinstall that is great. That'd be something to see a bunch of mothers take care of less fortunate mothers, right? That would be a beautiful thing. Ann Jarvis was able to establish this holiday, Mother's Day, where she would memorialize every mother, right? In fact, that was added on by those who would legalize back then they legalized or began the celebration of these holidays. So that was back in the you're talking about 1876 to the 1900s. And so that was, pretty much established. There's mothers are unsung heroes in many ways. They are. And there's a lot of sacrifices mothers make and a lot of things they go through that the world just doesn't recognize. And again, you have individuals or people who see the struggle of their own mothers. And this holiday was brought about by someone observing all those deeds of their mother and mothers around them, but they received no appreciation for what they had done, right? And we're not talking about today's world is a bit different. Back then, they would die at the age of 35. Think about this. The average individual, right, back during those days was, before they died at a young age. Did you guys know that? They died at a very young age. In fact, right now, the lifespan is longer than it's ever been in modern day history. But back then, it was a very tough life. They didn't have electricity, some of the commodities that we have today, right? They didn't have all the conveniences that some people just did not have those things. And so their struggle was quite real. And they still raised children, right? They still took care of the home. They still made the meals and all that. But making a meal was complete. For example, someone may throw a live turkey in the back. You would have to go out there and kill it and prepare it and do all that stuff that goes with it. So it wasn't all-day affair. This while you were taking care of the clothing. They didn't have GE washing machines back then either, not in every home. So they had to keep clothes clean, right? They made sure that everybody ate. They made sure that everybody could lay down and rest their heads. And they dealt with a lot of infestations back in those days, hostilities we wouldn't dream of. They didn't have air conditioning. And so there were some major things women had to go through back then. And it would actually shorten the lifespan of mothers back then, too. It really would. And it's one of those things when you see the struggle of people in a land, it is noteworthy, especially of women, how much they do, right? And that is just unseen. But most of us have an ability to tap in and really go back in our own minds and see what mothers have done, what they have put up with, just to raise their own children, right? And for gentlemen like me out there who take note of that, I will always appreciate any of those labors and sacrifices that people make for the raising of children, most notably in women. They go through a lot, right? They're truly gifted and a gift to society, right? This day does memorialize that in part. Today's Mother's Day, they have changed it, commercialized most things, right? The authenticity of this day has been removed through it being commercialized so heavily, right? But I thought that was an interesting note that you guys might want to know about the origins of Mother's Day, because I can only imagine if that were the case right now today, if mothers would get together and help out less fortunate mothers. You're talking about a rebuilding of society from the inside out. That would make that would be a huge change for a lot of people, wouldn't it? It'd be a huge change. Instead of self-indulgence, right? Because everybody likes we've gotten so used to self-indulgence. Sometimes we can't see our neighbor. Sometimes we can't contemplate the struggles or recognize the sacrifices of somebody else because of self-indulgence. And when these holidays come about, and you guys know, I have a big issue with many holidays. And the reason why is because everybody will sit back and say, me, 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 right? In fact, and please try not to do this yourselves. If, for example, on Mother's Day, suppose your child doesn't give you a card or something like that, don't discount the love they're giving you all year round because they missed one day. Don't do that. Because that's allowing darkness to turn a holiday into a weapon. It really is. You guys know I'm controversial, right? So I'm going to go ahead and tell you that darkness can weaponize a holiday. If you discount the love you've been receiving for the duration of time over one day. Don't do that, because Christmas time, that's when families fall apart. Father's Day and Mother's Day, same thing. Valentine's Day, people do hateful things during those times. Why? Because they don't receive what they wanted in that one day. In other words, they'll say, well, you don't love me because you didn't do this on this specific date. So they'll discount all the times before that. And that shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. I certainly don't do that. People can miss everything about me. It bothers me not, because I don't receive love based upon man's calendar, right? It can be complimented that way. It surely can. It's not something I'll just stand out and reject. I surely don't. But I will never discount somebody's authenticity based upon missing one day, or 2 days, or 3 days. I'm not going to do that. In other words, what I'm telling you is this: appreciate the love given to you every day. Never discount any day. So what if somebody can't make it on one day? Always remember the times they did make it. That's how I tend to look at life. Most people, they walk through life and they count their losses. I don't do that. I never count losses. Do you know why? Because in this world, I'm always going to have losses. I do count my blessings. So as a consequence of that, I'm never depressed, because I do not count losses. I will always count blessings. When I'm dealing with people, I don't remember every bad thing they did. That's the first thing I kick out of my mind. I remember all the good they attributed. I could care less about the bad they spread around. That's why I'm not depressed. That's why when I walk out in society, I may be a little different than everybody else, because everybody else has some trepidation towards other folks. I don't do that. See, if I wake up in a new day, this is a new opportunity for me. And I forward that same opportunity for everybody else, which means every single day I will always forgive everything that happened the previous day. I will never walk in yesterday. Always today. And today is forever a gift to me for every day that comes. I didn't have to, be alive in this day. This is God's day. I didn't have to be alive in his creation during this day, but I am. And if he saw fit to forgive me enough to have me live in this day, surely I can forget every trespass of everybody else. If there be a trespass, I never let those things mount up. Right? So if somebody ever talks to me, I can never talk about all the bad somebody did, because I truly choose not to remember it. And that's how I live my life. My life is not burdened by darkness in that respect. Right? I see darkness as something very different. I know that people change, and that's something that you always have to remember. People change. All right? They change. That's something that people in leadership would do well to take note of. People change. All right? It's why they like to prosecute people over things that happened 60 years ago. Haven't you guys noticed? They just love to prosecute people for any infraction in life. I'm not like that, nor will I be like that. I don't live in that world, right? I can control aspects of my world. I kick darkness out totally. I don't carry it with me. I carry no offenses with me. And that's, if you were to be like that, carry no offenses with you, carry no negativity with you, you would notice that your light would shine a bit brighter. It really would. It would shine a bit brighter. Your depressing days would go away. It's just like the state of the world, right? I'm highly aware of things that are not going right in the world, but it will never depress my day. I could sit in the middle of a nuclear war, and I would not be depressed. There's always a blessing in every day the Lord gives, no matter how dark a day everybody else thinks it is. So, I say this, a bit of a return, right, back from the commercialized world into the goodness God has established is a good thing. It's a very good thing, because sometimes we get caught up in these day-to-day affairs until they become our lifestyle, right? And it's not a good thing when we end up being the statistics of public information, meaning When you become a victim of all the negativity that's around you, right? It's because that's what you're choosing to look at, the negativity. Take note, negativity will always be around you. Satan is always going to be around you so long as Christ is not returned. Darkness is going to be there. People are going to do misdeeds and all sorts of things, right? That's always going to be there. That's something you never have to look for. Instead, focus your energy and your gifts and your wisdom and your collective skill sets. Focus on looking for the good in an individual, no matter how bad they are. Look for the good and make a difference. Make a difference. Just like mothers do, right? When civil wars were happening, world wars were happening, that's the very time many people needed their mothers. Do you guys know this? There are people on the battlefield, and it probably still happens in this time, that if they ever get close to death, in a lot of cases, they will call out for their mothers. Do you guys know that? Moms, take note of this. Take note of this. That when you're dealing with children, you are a very special figure, whether they tell you that or not. You are the closest thing to divinity they see at that point. You must understand that you represent something. You do, not the one next to you. You represent a divinity in that child's mind and heart. You will impact the way they see the world. So that's an awesome, great, and heavy responsibility the Lord has given you. Those children you have and have had, you're the only one that was capable of raising them. I hope you know that. That's why you had them. Whether they were adopted or not, you were the one capable of raising them, and nobody else was. That's why God had you raise them, no matter what the outcome was. Many of you didn't have, some of you had some not so good mothers, but guess what? You still survived. They still fed you. They still did things for you, didn't they? Never lock your mind into the darkness of what this world can often impede upon somebody else. Look for the good and all the contributions into your life so that you may contribute all of yourself to somebody else, your children. And realize you're a beacon. You stand for hope. You stand for faith. You are home, right? Let me explain that, this last thing. Then I'll take a small break and we'll go into a small talk. But ladies, women, mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers, hear me out. In a home, you may not know this. This is almost like lost knowledge I'm talking about here. You set the tone for that house. Here's what happens when your mind goes chaotic. Normally it's because of one reason, right? It's because you're looking inwardly. You're looking very deep inwardly at everything everybody did to you and what you're missing. Listen to me. You're looking at what you're missing. When you do that, everything around you turns dark. When everything around you turns dark, the entire household is upside down. Do you hear me? It's upside down. How many of you males out there, when your mother was not okay, you could feel the emotions of your mother? You could feel when something was wrong with your mother. How many of you are out there like that? When your mother was not okay, it was a disaster. It was the end of the world. Because you could feel it. And they never knew it. You could feel when tension was in the house. You could also feel when happiness was in the house. Mothers, you affect that household that way. And if you look inwardly and start counting your losses, you're going to be enveloped in darkness. That darkness is going to spread to everybody, and you're going to bring the whole place down. I'm sorry to dump all this on you, but that's the way the Father made it. right? Which is why it's very important that of all the people on earth, mothers, your loyalty to Christ is imperative. If everybody else falls around you, you must not fall. You must, with all of what you are, remember something, that all those lives around you are tied to yours. And if you fall, you can bring everybody down with you. The opposite side of that is this. When you determine in your mind that you're going to stand on your feet no matter what, right? No matter how you feel, what's going on, when you determine in your mind, you're going to stand on your feet. When you start setting the standard back in the home again, when you take control of those things you've already had control of, when you're whistling and doing your thing, the entire house is full of life. Full of life. You know what Proverbs says? Proverbs says something about a quarrelsome woman, about all these attributes of a woman that can destroy not only the house, but those who dwell in the house. Proverbs said it's better to dwell in the corner of a house than share the whole house with a quarrelsome woman. And the reason why is because women, you don't understand that you set the feeling of that house. You're even created for the reception of feeling. Do you know that? So you're going to feel everything twice as much. Ladies, don't look at the man and say, I don't understand why you don't understand. Don't ever say that. Don't ever seek for somebody to understand you, and they're not made to understand that way. Men are not made to understand things of flesh. Women are made to understand things of flesh because you're the nurturer, and you have to understand flesh to understand your children. Do you see that? Men can understand when they see somebody headed for failure. They can see that perfectly. Men can see when security is an issue around an individual. Men can see patterns, and where darkness can come into your home, that's what men can see. But they cannot feel the situation like you do. That's why they're so blunt. That's why sometimes they're so disconnected, because God made men different than women. You have the womb. Whether it's working or not working, you still have the womb. And because you have the womb, you have to be able to feel all things of flesh. You have to be able to discern emotions of everybody around you. And you have to learn to deal with that. Sometimes if you get aggravated, it's not even your aggravation. It's somebody else's. That's why you should never look inwardly and start counting everything that's happened to you. Because if you turn dark, the whole place around you is going to turn dark. You set the tone for the house. And if you stand on your feet, and if you determine, by way of your loyalty, if you determine that you're going to walk out that day in holiness as best you can, right? Then walk out that day in holiness, right? Be upright. Put a smile on your face. Get your standards back. Put life back in the home. You are responsible for that. And you know what happens when you do that? Do you know what happens? See, some ladies, you'll sit around, right? You know, I'm telling you the truth. I just counsel a relative in this same thing. You'll sit there. At first, your hair was remarkable. All of a sudden, over time, it all went to one side, right? Your nails, they were fairly decent. All of a sudden, right? Dishwater has taken its toll and you don't care. You cut your toenails, but then all of a sudden you have hooks on the edges of them, right? Now, this does not demean you in any way. It doesn't take away, but what it represents is your lack of concern for self. Your presentation, what you're presenting, right? Ladies, when you start getting like that, it's almost like you're dying inside. What's on the inside of you will reflect on the outside. And do you not know you'll start dressing differently? And you won't do anything. And you'll just sit there and say, what's the use? And then you fall into depression. All you have to do is set your own standard. You don't have to be like those in Hollywood and go get a facelift and all this stuff. No. No, but always be presentable. Do you know why? Because of what you represent. Do you not know what you represent? When everybody comes in the house and they see you, I'm telling you that if you are standing upright, if you are loyal in your heart to the Most High, and you're standing and walking by that way, when you have a smile on your face and you refuse to give in to any darkness, now you're mother again in that household. Now you're the problem solver. Now you're the standard bearer. Now you represent that banner you did long ago. And that's when everybody calms down. That's when everybody gets back to normal. Because those of you who fit that description I named a few minutes ago, you're asking yourself, I don't understand what's happened to everybody. I don't know how to fix it. You don't fix them. You fix yourself. You fix you. That's what you fix. You don't have to fix anybody else. When you fix you, they will catch up. They will catch up. But if you fall apart, the whole household is doomed. I know I said that was going to be the last thing, but I have one more thing. Just as important as you standing and setting your standards yet again, you have to be very careful of what spirit you hear. In the garden, the serpent did not talk to Adam. In the Bible, the serpent did not work through the man. It went through a woman. Why? Why? Why do spirits continually use women? They either use women or super young children, but why? It's because of what you're made, how you're made. Women, you're made to hear the cry of another. You're made to hear the desire of another. Right? You're made to hear that. You're also made to hear on both levels, both in the natural and spiritual, which means you're going to have lots of things speaking to you every single day of your life. It's important that you understand you have to put all of that through the filter of the Lord's Word. Never act on anything that comes, because in a lot of cases, you may think it's you. No, you have an increased set of desires internally, right? You have those desires so that you can relate to those little tiny kids in your womb. In order to know what a child who cannot speak wants, you have to be able to discern and hear things spiritually from that little child. And because of that, spirits will take full advantage of it. And when you're sitting there thinking, and you say, well, something told me to go and drive and find you right here. No, the Lord didn't do that. This is for you make your, God's not going to send you out to go catch somebody doing dirt. God doesn't do that. God never did that. Not ever. Satan does, because he wants you to accuse everybody you catch. And isn't it something how when you catch someone doing something in your eyes, you're ready to prosecute? You're always ready to prosecute because discipline is put in a woman for the sake of the child. Spirits will take advantage of that. You've got to take everything you hear in your mind through a filter of Christ, because if you're not careful, you'll be following instructions of darkness. That's why you can't read every book out there on E.T. and all this other stuff, because the Lord put things in you naturally. They're going to, and if you start reading everything you get your hands on, you're going to complicate your life to a level you can't escape from. And it will fight you every day of your life. God made men different. Do you not know that men have an ability to kick everything out of his head? Men can restart things at any given moment when they want to. And they will suffer nothing from the leftovers. We don't do that. Women, you'll always have to contemplate your history because your history is intimately tied to who you are. You can't just shut your mind off from history. Even when you tell others you have not. God made you differently than he made men. Everything you hear in your mind, every thought, every nudge, take it through the filter of the Almighty. God will never dispatch you to do dirty work. He's not going to use you as an element of division. He's not going to give you news on someone so that you can go tell somebody else. No, he's not going to do that. He knows how he made you. Therefore, he knows what he is giving you and what it will do when he gives it to you. And you have to check. You have to filter everything through Christ. Remember, ladies, you have earthbound desires in your flesh. You can't make those go away. You have to overcome them. It's important that you have them because you have to nurture. See, if you're disconnected from those things of the earth, you cannot nurture a child. All of us grew up in stages. We didn't come out of the womb holy. We had earthly desires. And stage by stage, we matured, we learned, we gained wisdom, stage by stage, never all at one time. There was a time in long past, none of us could understand this conversation. Right? There was a time, a long time ago, you didn't walk around with conviction of certain things that you walk around with conviction you have now. You thought the world was a magical place, and you thought that in innocence. There were lots of things we were ignorant to. But when you begin to grow, things begin to change internally. They change a lot. Through those stages of growth, it's important that a woman be able to communicate to her child on a level of love. That means that woman's going to have to tolerate and really understand past the foolishness of a child. Right? When a child makes a foolish statement, the mother's going to have to, she has an ability to hear the true intentioned communication. That's why a woman should never walk in offense, because you'll destroy what God is giving you naturally, and you'll be utilized as a weapon. Ladies, you're the backbone of the home. Can a human being stand up without a backbone? Can a man support any weight without a backbone? No, he cannot. You know, when you bend over and you pick up a pin, you know that's 6,000 pounds of pressure on your spine. Women, you're just like that. You're a backbone. You're a backbone. My. Got to get to know yourself again. Walk in your standards again. Make sure that those standards are pleasing to the Lord. Not as in times past, but this time that they're pleasing to the Most High. Be presentable. Be presentable, that nothing can hold you back from rendering that love you have inside you. You know how sometimes you'll be ready to talk to somebody, to render, to encourage, but because you did not walk in your own standards, you start looking at yourself and you say, well, I'm not ready for this, and then the whole thing is off. You're not able to show up to that calling, right? However, when you were dating, it was nothing for you to wake up and fix everything up and then go out, knowing that you have checked everything out, right? That you were presentable. You don't have to go over the top like you used to. But don't drop your standards, because what'll happen is when you drop your standards, you're going to rate yourself lower and lower. That's the key, is how you rate yourselves. It really has nothing to do with anybody else. It has everything to do with you. When you rate yourself at a very low rate on that scale, then you begin to not defend love in the house. You're not standing up in your standards. You're not setting a tone of love in that house. right? There's no life in the house. Everything starts to die. Some of you who are married, the men have been wanting to tell you this. They probably don't know how. Well, now you know it. Oh, and do this. You ready? There's one thing you must never, ever do. You must never do it. And gentlemen, you must never do it either. Gentlemen, you cannot pull an Adam and say the woman did it. Don't do that. Don't ever say it's the woman's fault. God made us in a way that we're able to absorb every wrongdoing of a woman and carry that burden and indeed repair anything that ever broke in the home. Do you know that? It will try you to your limits, but you're built to carry that until the Lord repairs it. Do you hear me? So don't blame things on the woman. Assume responsibility. Because men, if we are loyal, if we set that loyalty standard within ourselves, not forcing anybody else to do it, listen, this is key, right? This is key. This is why dating. People love to date. No one likes to get married. Because marriage has become like a prisoner or something like that. Why? Because God has been taken out of the marriage. Marriage was given so that people could be free, not so they can be in bondage, but because of man's traditions and rules and this spirit of control and offense in the earth, it's all been perverted. Men, within yourselves, look within yourselves and walk in your standard and render your best and get ready to carry everything. You're built for that. You're built to carry everything. That's what you're built to do. Don't look at the woman and say she did it. Don't do that. You're built to carry everything. In the garden, what would have happened if Adam would have never given in to his wife in a misdeed? Adam could have covered Eve. He could have covered Eve. But because Adam gave in to Eve, Adam had to endure the curse also. See how that works? Be a covering for your family and carry everything in the name of Christ. As Christ carried the sins of the world, carry your family. Carry your family and be determined to carry your family. Ladies, don't expect your husband to know anything about you. As you walk in your standards, you can show everyone who you are. Now, let me give the small truth, ladies. You have been redeveloping who you are multiple times throughout your life. You got to stop doing that. Don't develop who you are. Accept who God made you to be. Investigate those things you actually love, those things you actually like, those spiritual things you actually cling to. That's how you learn who you are. Not by adopting everything that you see on television or in a book or that somebody else is doing. You've got to keep your eyes out of your next door neighbor's house. In other words, don't look at somebody else's standard and then make that standard yours. You should never do that. Every woman should be unique, not a replica of somebody else. Women won't tell that one, guys, but they know they have changed multiple times. They'll put on a new person and you won't even know it. But they know it, and they need not ever do that. God made them someone that will surprise them if they will only seek it out. You'll only find that in Christ. You're not going to find it anywhere else. And the good thing about Christ is what? Today is a new day, and yesterday no longer exists. How about that? You know what that means? If today is a new day, then not one soul has been left behind. And today is an opportunity for all. I'll be back in a few minutes right here at the Council of Time. Happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. I'll be right back. Okay, everybody, I'm back and on a more on a better note here, dealing with current events. I want you guys to do me a favor. I will accommodate you in this. I want you guys to do something, because a certain clock has started, and not too many people know about that clock. It's a very special clock, and it never fails. It's ticking. And you guys have preparations to make. That you do. In fact, I'm looking at a list. I'm double checking right now. And in this list are preparations that I personally would like everybody in COT to make and have done within at least 4 days, 4 or 5 days from the date it's published. If you guys can do that. If anybody needs help in that, we're going to have some sort of discussion that some of you guys may be able to help out some others if they need that help in preparations. I want you guys to know something that a long time ago we had a discussion about. Somebody asked about some serious events during the end days, specifically regarding the fall of society. And when they asked about the fall of society, I told you guys some very specific things. I said, when you stop seeing important people and people who really have the wherewithal to run this country, when you stop seeing those individuals, it's because they're gone. They began to pull people into specific places, protected places. And the reason for that is because you're going to have a continuation of America, a continuation of Europe, a continuation of all these different nations. But in order to do that, they have to split the nations. They have to take the important individuals who care about the country, who know exactly what to do in just about every single event. They have to pull these people into very special places. And nobody would ever see them again. They would essentially take them out of circulation. If you look at the world right now, it appears that most of the people who are in leadership should not be in leadership, just pure and simple. And it's also, we discussed something else, because somebody said, well, wouldn't everybody know? And I said, no, because people are going to lose their ability for sober things. People won't be able to tell because they're going to be so intertwined with some of the things happening. They'll just join in with the whole club, right? And they'll just do everything as normal because they want to prop up the idea of normalcy to everybody. But the telltale signs are people who should not be governing nations will govern nations. People who should not negotiate foreign policy will negotiate foreign policy, things of that nature, right? As a consequence of leadership, societies would begin to crumble. And it would appear to be, and this is what I said a long time ago, it would appear to look like things are getting out of control, like lawlessness is really about to just fall away. And people will begin to do everything they want to. I did tell everybody that most people would be armed, right? People would, crime would start to increase at an exponential rate. But the important people you would no longer see. The people who had true resolve, and they knew what they were doing in the countries, they would just up and disappear one day. Well, if you look at the selection of those we have in leadership, many of them should not be in leadership. They shouldn't go higher than where they are. They're stepping into roles that they're just acting a part. They really are acting a part. If you look at some of the successes in America, we've had no successes. In truth, we have not had any. We've been stagnant for a very long time. And it's incredible that a lot of people are not able to see that there's been little to no change for a very long time, right? There's been propaganda and hype, but there's been no substantive change in things. The economy, every year, of course, there's an economic collapse. Every year. This has happened every single year. Somebody announces an economic collapse. And every single year, the same thing takes place, right? All the experts come out and they say, we're going to have an economic collapse. And after a few bills are passed, all of a sudden nobody talks about it anymore. And then it's back to zero as usual. In the meanwhile, the prices of items have been going up at a very steady pace. Very steady pace, right? The truth is they can't afford to pay people what they're paying them because of distribution. I want you guys to know something about money. This system of money is very fragile, right? In the Bible, and we're not doing the theologian eschatology thing here. It's not what we're doing here. But in the Bible, I'm using this as a reference of something. In the Bible, you have the seals that are opened, right? You have the seals. And I know a lot of people think that Revelation 6:6 is about an economic collapse, right? I know that's what they think. When he opens the third seal, and a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hands. But these are balances. And he says, with the balances, he heard a voice in the midst, for be say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see that thou hurt not the oil and the wine. What people fail to realize is that many years ago, we did not have a global economy, right? In other words, if a nation fell, it would not affect another nation. We don't have that anymore. If one nation falls, the stock market tanks. It affects everything, right? So while everybody's looking at this being an economic collapse, I never really saw it that way, but everybody has their own opinion. I saw it as an established global economic system. And in truth, right now, right, it wasn't that way before. Because again, if a nation fell back then, it would not affect another nation. In this case, the nation we have today, if China fell, it would affect everybody so bad. If the U.S. fell, it would affect everybody so bad. If Europe fell, it would affect everybody so bad that recovery would almost be impossible. Why? Because you have to understand the stock market too, right? Suppose somebody called the debt on any one nation out there. If they said, okay, we want you guys to pay all your debts today. How is the country going to pay those debts? How would they do that? They don't pay their debts with money. Do you know that? That's not what they do. They don't pay it with money. It's another set of books for paying debts. That's why the debt can be so high, and yet everything can continue to function like normal. Now, I know people get angry at debt and everything else. It's because they have a lot vested in the public markets. But the public markets are based off faith. And what I mean by that is this. So long as everybody feels that they can get the upper hand, they're going to continue to invest and put their money in investments, which causes everybody else to have a lot of money. But if something were to happen where nobody trusted the markets, and let's say the money situation never changed. In fact, let's say the money system was perfect, that there was no debt, and all of a sudden people got nervous about the markets. Do you not understand they can cause an economic collapse in the markets because they feel bad? I hope you understand that. People start pulling out their money, it causes other people to lose their money. This is a 6th tier program. It's not first, second, or third tier. This is 6th tier. That's when the public can follow the investments of very real corporations, but the money in those corporations is only in there by faith and by how people feel. If everybody gets nervous and they start taking their own personal money out of the markets, it will affect somebody else. And then this will in turn affect other markets and other nations. Before you know it, everybody is down. So what I'm telling you, an economic collapse in the markets could happen because everybody wakes up and feels bad. If they feel nervous. Now, everybody wants an answer as to why they never let secrets come out. That's why. Because if secrets come out, it's going to make people nervous. If they get nervous, they're going to lose confidence. If they lose confidence, they're going to pull their money out. If they pull their money out, then the monopoly money goes, that's not real money. It's just a note. It's an IOU. It's a promise. It's not real money. People start pulling that out, which causes other people to lose money. That's all. That's what the stock market is. That's what all this stuff is. When it comes to real debt, right? There is a real money. There's real money, but you'll never ever get your hands on the real money. You'll never ever get your hands on any real debt, right? Gold used to be the backing of money. It used to be the backing of a nation's money. Gold did. All that is different now. It's very different. Very, very different now. Money is a made-up system, something that doesn't really exist, right? Something that is more like an allocation system. An allocation of resources system is what it is. A control system. They control the allocation of resources. That's all that is. That's why we read in Revelation how that the people in the kingdom of the beast were so happy. I assure you they did not have an economic collapse. Did they? That's why, these Persian kings were so rich, and they continue to be rich until Christ came. That's why Babylon was so rich until it was destroyed. Did you hear me? Until it was destroyed. It was rich. In fact, it was rich up until the very day when people wailed for her, seeing smoke coming up from her. It was rich. How about that? See how that sounds? See what that is? Right now they're having a changeover of economics into a system that will never fail. Because it's not run like the old one, right? But it's so people were born into a system where we don't realize that these systems we utilize and depend on are made-up systems, man-made, made-up systems, right? They're all intimately tied together. Going back to the SEALs, the establishment of this global economy did not take place until the end of the 1980s. Did you guys know that? In fact, it actually took place in 1996. Did you guys know that? That's when it took place, in 1996. 1996 was the beginning of the global economic system. That's when everything was tied together. 1996, that wasn't that long ago. Was it? No, it wasn't. And so when people are experts in finances, they understand a tier of the system. Not all tiers, but a tier of the system. That's what they understand. In Revelation, when it says he had a pair of balances in his hand, right? A measure of wheat for a penny, measure barley for a penny, and see thou heard not the oil or the wine, okay? This wheat for a penny and barley for a penny, I know a lot of people look at that as inflation or something like that. The balances give it all away. Everything is based on this global economic system. Everything is based on this global economic system. The computers have allowed a global economic system. And now, by way of technology and computers, everything is intimately tied together. See how that goes hand in hand? It took computers to tie everything in, which is why when the oil prices start to fluctuate, markets do crazy things. The global markets do this. All that began in 1996. Right? You can have all the backing in the world for all types of currency. It still can fail due to the lack of confidence of people. So it's very important that propaganda continue to go forward to give people a positive attitude behind the creation, right? Behind the succession of these nations that are in the world. But make no mistake about it, it's all about to be altered. Remember, everything is linked by way of technology, computers. Everything right now is in a database. The money printed just represents nothingness. It's a note. That's all it is, a note in circulation, right? The real wealth and the real power is not based in money. It's based in control. This global economic system has been established. Technology links it together. The heart of the people determine if that sixth tier collapses or stands. Sure, we're going to have inflation and everything else. I call those corporate temper tantrums. That's what I call them. It's a temper tantrum of corporations. They normally do this right before election seasons. All you have to do is start looking through the charts. You'll see it. Normally through election seasons, based on the little wars they have about this policy, that policy, which is in fact one corporation trying to get control over another corporation's assets. That's all it is. Once they settle all that out, all of a sudden everything goes back to normal by at least 2%. Though inflation never ceases. Have you noticed it's a buildup? Every time we have inflation, it continues to rise. Even in those times they said we did not have inflation, right? Inflation was there. Because that term inflation is one of those made-up terms, and on the sixth tier, it means one thing, but at its root is something totally different. Because this is a man-made system governed by computers now. It's governed by computers. Even the gold being kept, that was kept, I'll say, right? Something else has happened to the gold, which is why people of nations have that gold. Now, here's a big one. What would happen if all the people in America wanted to take most of their riches to another nation? What would happen to the country where they took all those riches to another nation? Here's what you may not realize. That has already happened a couple times and nothing took place. Why? Because it's a computer-based system. That's why. Money is real to people. Money is not real to those who govern it. It's only real to people because you pay a penalty for not having enough. If you don't have enough money, you can't get care, you can't get food, you can't get housing, you can't do anything. That does not apply to them. They don't utilize money like us. They go into a restaurant. There are people right now, they go into a restaurant, they don't pay anything. And nobody better ask them to pay anything. They walk in and walk out. They walk into any restaurant they want to and eat. They walk into any store, take any merchandise they want, and they leave. They don't pay anything, and nothing is written down. Did you know that? They don't. They don't do any of that. They go into a hotel. They get booked. They don't pay anything. They don't pay a thing. In fact, that room is marked red, which means it's kind of shut down, closed off, reserved, whatever the case is. They don't pay anything. There's people running around like that. Tens of thousands of people run around like that. They're from a different tier set, right? We operate on the control region, the sixth tier of a very complicated computer system. Artificial intelligence is coming out. It's going to be very important for the economic system. Why? Why? Suppose AI recommends that you take your money out of one thing and put it in something else. That's what it's going to do for the beast system. It's going to essentially, and this is why a lot of billionaires are starting to speak up now, because they know what's about to happen. And what AI will do is suggest to the individual, right? Not that it's going to make that individual rich, but it's going to take certain corporations down. It's going to take them down, take them out. It's going to cause people not to buy merchandise from them, not to have investments in them. That's how they take corporations down these days. That's the only way to do it. If they don't exist on that sixth tier, people won't accept them. Thus, they really don't exist. That means you can't have other people who are on payroll in view of the sixth tier that can get rich from it. Now it's an underground corporation. Now it's a lower tier corporation, which means nobody really sees it. The people still keep their money. It's just that you don't have an active part in society that way. You're not visible anymore. And they want to be visible. A lot of these corporations, they want to be visible, right? Because they sit like kings and queens. But the economy is very different than what they have trained anybody to believe. The economy right now is computer-based, set protocols, standards, methodologies, and practices. That's why experts have been saying all this time that a collapse is a month away, and it never took place. Haven't you noticed? The experts now were saying it was a collapse, and it never took place. The experts of the experts were saying there was a collapse, and nothing ever took place. I remember back in the housing bubble, the government got mad at the Lehman Brothers because their acquisition of certain companies was not supposed to ever take place, right? They had a discussion with some of the big G meetings on this, like this G8, G7, all these different things. They had a meeting on that. 5 months later, the Lehman Brothers went out of business. So did two of the banks that backed the Lehman Brothers. Isn't that something? And I was very familiar with the Lehman Brothers. That's not something to brag about. But I was very familiar with them. And they took them down like it was nothing. The Lehman Brothers were supposed to be a company that couldn't be touched, and they were an example to the rest of the world, to the rest on the I believe it was the fourth tier. They were used as an example of exactly what can happen through no confidence with people. Right? The system, everything is being switched over to. Well, it takes even that control out of people's hands. The control will no longer be in your hands either. That means you can go to the markets and pull all your money out, and it won't affect the markets. That's what it means. When this other system is in play, you will no longer have an ability to affect the markets by pulling out all of your money. It's going to be governed very differently. It's changing right before your eyes, and the changeover is happening right now. So we've had a global economic system established. It's already been established. That started in 1996. Now we have the changeover, right? I believe they call it a one asset rule system. So essentially what that means is on your first through the sixth tier, you'll have one controller. That's never happened before. One controller. And through the advent of AI, everything will be changed. Now, as far as the rest of these things happening, scripted is a good word. Scripted. That's a very good word. Right? Let me give you guys one caution. Ready? In this conversation, keep these terms that I'm telling you, but just keep them. People will have to catch up to them. You have experts who have not heard these terms yet, but they will. And they will talk about them. And when they start talking about them, they're going to be the experts on them, so they think. I'm just telling you about these things now to get it out of the way. Because the experts don't even know about these terms yet. And don't ask me how I know them if they don't know them. Don't ask me that. I'm not special by any means. Seriously, I'm not. But these things will come about. They're already happening, right? Which means you've got to get prepared. The financial system is one thing, but that's something you have greater concerns. The greater concern involves the human element. The human element that nobody can control, and they know it. If the true elitist could control the human element, there'd be no need to have safe places. No need. Right? There has to be safe places first because of lawlessness, because of people taking power into their own hands. Interestingly enough, a long time ago in COT, we talked about people no longer listening to their governments, didn't we? How they would reject government, how people would see a split the first split in government, how the southern and northern states would constitute the first split. And they would have a representative for each. It's happening right now before your eyes. Right now. Essentially, this is what we face, and this is why I will not take sides. I will not. See, I already happen to know because God named what he's a part of and what he's not a part of. He already named that. He is not a part of violence. He's not a part of any of this stuff that they have practiced in the earth. He's not a part of that. This is man's doings. In America is a good example of that. You have two polarized sides. You know what? In fact, who's in the middle? If you understand politics, who's in the middle in the USA? Nobody is. It's either far right or far left. Haven't you noticed? Nobody is in the middle. Nobody is in the middle. When has that ever happened? How has it gotten so polarized? Now we live in a time where people follow ideologies. They don't follow what's good for the people. They follow ideologies. Now, instead of defending those who can't defend themselves, they're defending their leadership's ideologies. Only because the leadership speaks the ideology of those selected individuals on the far right or far left. This will constitute a war because there's no peace declaration in these far elements. The middle has been taken out. That's missing. That's gone. It's gone, and it won't come back. It's gone, and it's about to get a lot worse. See, while they're fighting, things have been happening in the world. While they're fighting, they have blacked out the news for everybody else. You guys can't get Reuters, not the true news of Reuters, I'm sorry. You can't get that. You can't get news from Pakistan and places like that like you need to without it being sanitized, right? So they emphasize this media battle that's happening. They're trying to say that one is more trustworthy than the other, although, you know, here's my take on both sides. You ready? You ready? There's a side that refuses to call racism, and there's a side that refuses to call gayism an abomination. And both sides claim they're doing the work of God. It's kind of like these people who say, well, you know, the apostles didn't write Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Do you guys know the history on that for people who say that? They have no idea what they're believing in. My goodness. Don't worry, I'm going to share that history with you. But you have people out there that believe that the apostles did not write Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's what they believe. They believe somebody else wrote it. I don't subscribe to any of that nonsense. All that is conjecture, and if they knew the source of that it came from someone who ultimately said Jesus is not Jesus, the same one who put that out, the same one who put that information out, now they have a lot of people following it, right? People actually believe that. Now they're saying that Jesus is not Jesus. They said this back in the 1902, or when was it? I had to get the dates together for you guys, but I have a thing on that, specifically for that, because a lot of ideologies are floating around now, and people, I'm telling you right now, they're changing the gospel of Jesus Christ, is what they're doing. And they're going to be plucked out of any place. See, when they start selling in places that bring nothing but corruption, right? But they believe it. And here's something else. These same individuals always happen to be these, well, I can't even mention, I'll have to go through that anyway. There's a war on the gospel right now. But to understand that, you have to understand the history behind it. So I'm going to give you the entirety of that history. Right here in COT, I'm going to give you the entirety of that history. Because there are a lot of people who believe that right now. They believe it right now. They're walking around powerless. And that's what they believe. They have no power, nor will they have power to work. And they believe that. And they're just trying to claw their way into every assembly. I can tell you right now, I won't permit that here. Not even a discussion of that. We're centric on Christ. All those arguments, if I so much as if they pop up and somebody actually believes that, they got to go. Because if they believe that, right, then their basis of faith is in something other than faith. And I'm not sure you can call that faith at all. And that's not why this place exists. It's important that everybody be able to be exactly who they are in the freedom of Christ. And while everybody's trying to prove things they couldn't possibly know, we're going to stick to Christ and continue to have revelation from him. And people's situations will continue to change. Right? That's a blessing to me when people's kids come back, when their homes are in repair, right? When the impossible happens. And we get that every single week. My goodness, here at COT, we get that every single week. And it's because people are seeking Christ for themselves. That's why it's happening. It's because people are turning back to Christ, not turning to man, not turning to me, not turning to anybody else, but they're turning back to Christ. And when they do that, there's a notable difference in their households. These people who start following this track of this religious thing, right? This certain type of doctrine that has crept in every single place you can see it. These theologians, and some of these, among these theologians, are atheists, hidden atheists, who do not believe in Christ, but they're in the institutions, and they are the ones putting out a bunch of this rhetoric. The historical figures who fought against the Bible being, in fact, they said that Hebrews should be removed, Revelation should be removed, named a couple more, and they tried to actually get them removed. This because they said the apostles did not write Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that somebody else came along later and wrote that. They actually subscribed to that. Now, people tout this because they got it. It has one origin, not three, not four, not five. It has one origin. And when you find out who the origin is, that's when you start to say, that's a doctrine that doctrine can't be here in this house. It's not. In fact, I'm going to make a special notice on the site about that because it's important that that doctrine stay with those who house it. They have to keep it there, right? Because that's not this place. And see, guys, haven't you noticed I have an issue with all things that mankind has done that turned into an outright an abomination to the living God? I have an issue with that. And I will not tolerate nor replicate that stuff here. I won't do it. I can't do it. That's not me. It's not me. That's not what the Lord called me for. But you have people out there, that's what they honestly believe. They're going to have to learn some things the hard way. But for the rest of the people here who are Christ-centric, right? Not with these doctrines, not with these undertones of these doctrines, but those who are Christ-centric, there's some preparations we have to have. 4 inches closer every day. It's going to catch people off guard. In my humble opinion, nothing will hold it off this time. It's likely to spread beyond its own borders very quickly. The tensions are going to rise globally. And it will escalate from there. And we have some things to contemplate and to prepare in truth. The one thing I will never do is advise anybody to act on speculation. No, we don't act on speculation. That's foolishness. In this case, we need the truth. Not theory, but truth. I don't know about you, but I believe that our Father still gives revelation of the truth. That's what I believe. And with the elements the Lord has blessed us with, because we have feet on the ground in many different places. We have an absolute first seat, ringside to these happenings. And it's right now, these contentions are unlike any other time in history except Pearl Harbor. See, in Pearl Harbor, before it was hit, the opposition had already launched their plan. The people didn't know it until the ships blew up. But the plan had been launched a week prior, or a couple weeks prior. And before that, the plans had been solidified a year before. And that's a whole year. That same thing is happening now. The plans have been solidified 2 years ago. The operations have gone into motion. The results will be here soon. Once you put an operation in motion, you don't call it back. You don't recall it. There is no recall. Once it's in motion, it's going to stay in motion until it accomplishes what it set out to accomplish. There is no country that will be exempt this time. It will not be confined within anybody's regions. This will be worldwide. That's why it's important we have these preparations, open talks, lots of meetings, serious prayer time. The real gospel, not any made-up gospel, but the real gospel. That requires all of us. In COT, it's important that not just one person does not dictate all of COT. That's very important, but by way of a council of a lot, we'll have that truth. It's not going to come through just me and that's it. They can never work that way. That's not what's purposed. I can set an initial standard, light an initial fire, but it will take the counsel. And in that counsel, through prayer, through revelation, through the Lord's way, not through divination, not through any of those ways that mankind currently uses, because everything they have sought to do has failed. Haven't you noticed? They're supposed to be advanced, and we're still paying for medication. Doctors are still trying to cheat people who are broken. They're still taking advantage of the poor and the broken. That's why you have to pay for medications. They say they want to help you, like in a commercial. Call us. We want to help you. But you know a hospital is not going to help you unless you're about to pay out some money, right? It's kind of like those denture commercials. They want to help you, right? They want to get you smiling again. But if you don't have any money, they can't do anything for you. Somebody says, do we all constitute the council? Like you do. You do. That's exactly what I mean when I say the core family. See, the core family of COT is those people are Christ-centric. Right? These ideologies and theories where people believe these weird things, they can't be on the inside of the family. You know what the truth is? The truth is we do not know That's what the truth is. You don't know. That's what the truth is. And if a person can't admit that small truth, yet they'll stand for the writings of someone that's not Jesus Christ, we can't have that, and that's the reason why. Just imagine if a person advocated some man's book, right? And they would just, chew people out and get an attitude with people over what somebody else thought. Those are the very people we don't need. We need people who will stand for the words of Christ, right? Who's not going to sit there and fight everybody over what's written in somebody else's book. We don't need somebody who's going to stand up and advocate for what man wrote. We need somebody who's going to advocate for those common things that Jesus gave us. The Lord can sort out all of his own details. My point is, you have a lot of people who adopt these ideologies. These are weapons of division and cannot be proven either way. But they will fight for them tooth and nail. They'll curse you out if you tell them they're wrong, and we don't need that. Those things we cannot have here because they won't be Christ-centric. They're always going to have some worldly figure that they're going to give reference to and place above somebody else's view on something else. The truth is we don't know. But we do know what Jesus Christ said. We do know that through Revelation, all of us can have the truth. And in the minute of standard, here's what we normally do. We'll pray for something, right? The next 2 or 3 days, we'll see what answers we have. If it's the truth, all of us will agree perfectly. Now, we don't sit there and we write down our answers. Now, this is amazing. Suppose everybody wrote down their answer. They turned in that answer, right, in view of everybody right there, and then somebody read all the answers. Suppose 99% of those answers are written exactly alike. You know that's from the Most High. That's what we accept as truth. If there are too many differences in it, we cannot use it. If it's not aligned, we cannot use it. See, because in that minute of standard, we rely upon revelation from Christ for real, not the play stuff, the real stuff. So if it does not align, we can't even act on it. We can't do anything with it because the Lord he's not divided in any way. And when he works, it's going to be exactly alike. I get passionate talking about it because we've experienced this so much. Yet you have a lot of people who have not, they say they love the Lord, but they can't even believe in what the Lord will do. Does that make sense? And the Lord desires that all of us know him this way, right? And you will know him that way based upon your loyalty to him, not to some author, not to man's works. The Bible says, cease ye from man whose breath is in the loins. And all too often, we put our trust in men. And then we sit up doing what? With a frown on our faces because something didn't come out right. That's why I told everybody in COT, I will fail every expectation you have. So don't put your expectations in me. Put your expectations in the Most High. That's why I never put my expectations in people. A person can't keep my standards. I don't want them to either. Because all of us are unique. You're one of a kind. There's only one like you. And you're critical to what happens during these days. I love the truth. As a consequence, and because of who I used to be, I can't stand the words of men. I can't stand it. I can hear pride. I can hear men boasting. That's why I speak against a lot, don't I? I speak against that term, common sense, logic, academia, all those things. That's not centric in my faith. Jesus is. That's the name given to us. We can call God by no other name. God, by the way, is a designation. It is not his name. Jesus is the name that we were given. You start mentioning Christ, that's when people pop up and say, well, his real name wasn't that. That was written so that the people would do this, that, and the other. No, no, no. I believe in Christ, period. Period. And that will never waver. That will never waver. And we are in critical days. And although everybody is needed, unfortunately, everybody won't participate. Because they will not agree to be Christ-centric also. They won't agree with that. Why doesn't anybody mention that in 2018 Swedish government synod? Well, actually, somebody did mention that. Somewhere around that time. There's a few people who did mention that. Of course, though, 2023. I'm surprised somebody's stomach is not turned all the way upside down at what's happening now. See, folks, listen. This is why we have to be ever so careful in these days. We have to really give an effort to focus ourselves on Christ, on his principles, his word. Stay away from all this other stuff, because it will be a distraction at the wrong time. At the wrong time. These are days of establishment. They can be beautiful days for those who love the Lord. But we all know that with an opportunity comes a great time of regret. Like the times we regretted we did not give all of our attention to Christ at certain times in our lives. Well, this day we can follow him in truth. This day we can go forward in truth and never have that regret in the days to come. If you don't want to frown on your face in the days to come, then give your all today. We know that a frown comes on our face when we leave things undone and we don't see the outcome of Christ because we did not conform to his ways and we did not believe in his ways. Well, today is an opportunity to erase that frown. It really is. Because you'll look back on this day. You will look back on this conversation and say, I remember when we had that conversation and I did absolutely nothing. The Bible teaches us that many will have deep regrets because they did not hear. They didn't take the moments given them to prepare, to seek the Lord with all of who they are, not half of who you are, all of who you are. And if you don't want to be those who regretted what they did, then take advantage of this day the Lord has given. Do all that's right in this day. And if you wake up tomorrow, do it again. And if you wake up the next day, do it again. And do it as much as the Lord is willing to give you a day of his that you may occupy it. But be Christ-centric. Please be Christ-centric. And by the way, don't worry, as we go through the history of the Bible and a myriad of events that took place, anybody who's a wolf in those sessions, they'll likely stand up. They will. Because we have to talk about everything about the Bible, right? Everything about the Bible. Why they did what they did, all those answers are right there before us now. If you have that history, you'll be able to see it. But if you haven't noticed, that is something that a lot of people are not willing to discuss. Have you noticed that? They're not willing to discuss that. They're not willing to release all that information. They're not. You have to literally go to just about every single country just to attain the information. Literally, you have to do that. You can't go online and get all that information. You can't do that. It's not available. You have to go places, right? But it's important that people understand that because it will help out your faith big time. It will demonstrate to you Satan's fight. and the true darkness at hand. It's almost liberating. And it does make you fall to your knees and say, thank you, Lord Jesus. It will point a person back to Christ and away from every author they ever knew. That's what it does. Because have you guys noticed that there's a common theme when people are talking about the Lord? They'll bring up 90 billion authors and say, well, so-and-so wrote this, and so-and-so wrote that, and so-and-so wrote this, and so-and-so. But yeah, but what did God give you? What is God giving you? What God gives you guys in COT, that's important to me. What he gives you spiritually, that's important. If you guys ever exercise discernment, you realize discernment is a gift. You know how that gift works. Well, you know how discernment works in truth, right? Real discernment. Then you also appreciate that type of gift in somebody else. You do. You also understand that the Lord will never steer you in the wrong direction and that the Holy Spirit never makes a mistake. Not ever will it ever make a mistake. We make mistakes, but the Holy Spirit never makes a mistake. And those of you who are partakers, you understand precisely what I'm talking about. You understand what I'm saying. And while there's still time, I personally am going to make every effort to do all of what needs to be done so that all of us can be Christ-centric without these points of confusion all along the way. And again, it's not about my word being over somebody else's note. This is about the Lord's word, period. Not about me, not about anybody else. It's about Christ. That's where your breakthrough is, with Christ. It's not necessarily a place, but it is with Christ. I appreciate all of you guys here. I do. This is a beautiful family. But Christ is your salvation. He is the way. He is the truth. He is the light. I'll be back in a few minutes right here with Council Town. Let me see what time it is. I got to go, guys. Pastor Paul's coming on. We can't interfere with that. Let me go. I may be back on at midnight, though. Okay? But I know that Pastor Paul comes on about now, and I don't want to get in the way of that. All right? I'm going to see you guys later. I will be in the chat room, however. I might even play Pastor Paul. I'll tell you what, you guys can stay put out. I'll load them up. How about that? We'll be right back in that case.